Hey guys, today we are going to have a quick intro to our Arduino boards, and today we're going to focus on blinking light tutorial. So last week in class we learned about a simple circuit and how the flow of electrons requires a closed circuit. So for instance, this opening right here would have been closed with the use of a battery. And then we would have had our little switch from here to here. And we did this in class. And you should be able to find the same battery that you used last week, as well as an LED still loose in that bucket. So today we are going to be taking this basic idea and applying it to our breadboard. So my breadboard right now looks a little crazy because of all the different things I have set up. And eventually we're going to take the lesson we use today to wire up a few LEDs with long wire. The reason I have it on such long wire array from the board is so that I can put them anywhere in my haunted house that I want. So I can just run this wire behind a wall. I can have it setting up. So we will be putting everything today directly to the breadboard. None of it's going to be on long wires, but this is what we will eventually look like. It's a little chaotic, but trust me, if we take our steps, this is going to be quite simple. So let's go ahead and look at the next drawing that we did together last week. This is what we call a breadboard. And a few things to note about a breadboard is how it is connected. So on either side of the breadboard, we have a negative and a positive. And if I plug into any one of the negatives, it will make all of those in that column work. And same goes for positive. But what's different is that here in the middle, I have a bunch of rows and columns that are labeled by letters, and then up there's going to be numbers. I'm going to show you a real board in here in just a moment, and they're connected horizontally. So if I plug in right here, that lights up, or excuse me, that makes these two other dots work. But this one has nothing to do with, say, this one up here. They're not connected. So on the outsides, it's vertical connections, and on the insides, it's horizontal. And this is going to make sense as we go. So let's go ahead and get our Arduino kit that is in the bucket. I have one per team, so we are going to be working together. At any point you need to pause or rewind part of this video, please do so. I have also posted in Canvas videos from other people explaining how to use this Arduino. So if the way I am describing it to you today does not make sense, go ahead and watch those videos because sometimes it's helpful just to hear from someone else. All right. So when you open your board, excuse me, your box, you're going to have your USB. This does two things. One, it allows us to put our program into our Arduino board, and it's a power source. But we're going to talk about how there's multiple power sources, so you don't always have to be hooked up to a computer. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to the side. That will be our next video. We're not programming in this video. Then you should have a whole bundle of wires. These are how we connect. So these are our connector wires from the board to the breadboard. And I will have all different types of wires. In fact, when we do our haunted house, we will just use a roll of wire like this. That way we can determine how long our or how far away, excuse me, our things are going to be from the breadboard. This is just going to help me connect our Arduino board to the breadboard. All right, so I'm just going to put the wires to the side. I should have a little baggie, or in one or two of these boxes, they might just be loose, but you'll have a switch and then a bunch of LEDs. Set that to the side. And here is our Arduino. This is the brain. This is going to do all the work. This is where we plug in the USB. If we get another power source, it'll go in here. Let's take note of a few things. We're not going to do anything to the center in this activity. That we're not there yet. On this side, we have 5V, 3.3V. These are voltages. You're going to notice it says power. So we're going to use this section when we actually put in our motors, the ones that can open and close doors and stuff like that, because we want to be able to control how much voltage is going to that. Also notice that there are two GNDs here. That is ground. We have to be plugged into ground for anything to work. It's going to help our circuit. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. Let's skip over to the other yellow side. We will also be using these down here, but this one over here is another ground. You'll see the GND. And then we have a bunch of numbers. Now notice that these digital PWNs have, some of them have these little squiggle lines. We're going to be using the squiggly line numbers during this because those allow us to dictate how much voltage is going into our LEDs or in other things. These are called analogs. The ones like 13 and 12, 8 and 7, those we can only turn lights on and off. So if there's a light that you just want to have turn on and off in your house, then just plug it into pin 13 because that one does just on off. We'll talk about that as we go. All right, you also have your breadboard. It's like a half breadboard compared to the one I was showing you. Again, notice that it has the positive and negatives, that those run vertically. And then we have, I'm going to turn it this way. We have these columns and we have these rows. So row 1, all of those connect together. So if I pin right here in C, E1 is also going to work because C is plugged in. So all of these rows connect. But here's the thing. These rows do not connect to these rows. This middle half part right here, it's almost like saying, hey, you have two separate boards here. This side is not connected to this side. So that just gives us a lot of options in where we're pinning things. We also have a few resistors in here, but for this activity, we're not going to be using them. So let's go ahead and put back our USB and our resistors in this box and set it to the side. That way none of that gets in our way. All right. So we're going to get started. We're doing a very basic blinking LED light today. So we want it to blink. When we made our simple circuit on Friday, the only way we could make it blink is if we were pressing down the switch over and over, but I want this to do the work, not me. So let's find an LED. And I'd also like for you to find one of the batteries that we use because I want to check to make sure that the LED we're about to use works. Otherwise, we won't know if it is the LED or our setup. So let's go ahead and we just put positive, which is the long leg, to positive, which is the side of the battery that actually has a plus symbol on it, and negative, which is the short leg, to the back. And if you can put them on and and it lights up, then you know that your LED is working. All right, so we know our LED works. Let's go ahead and put that battery either back in the bucket or just to the side. All right, so simple circuit here. If we look back at our simple circuit, we know negative always has to be connected to negative, positive goes to positive, and we have to make a full circle for everything to work. Let's start with the LED. I'm going to go ahead and look at my breadboard. We're going to be plugging the LED in one of these rows. Excuse me, two of these rows. I do not want them to be in the same one because it's negative and a positive. So let's just go up. I think I'm going to do 2 and 4 just because my legs here are already kind of spaced out for that. So again, you want them to be in 2 different rows. You can't see it because of my nails. 2 different rows. And it doesn't matter if I do 2 and 4. If I do 2 and 5, I could go down here and put it 15 and 17 as long as they're in different rows. So I'm going to go ahead. Long leg is going to be further down. So if I'm looking at it sideways, I'm going to have my short leg going on the left, long leg going on the right. If I'm looking at it this direction, have your long leg up closer to the top numbers and lower, and the positive leg is at higher numbers, if that makes sense. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in 2 and 4. I want to make sure it gets in there. All right, so again, my short leg, which is negative, is here in the 2s, and my positive leg is here in the 4s. It's important to note that now everything in row 2 is going to interfere with my negative leg. So I have to make sure everything that I plug into row 2 is on the negative flow. And everything I plug into row 4 needs to be part of the positive flow so that my electrons circulate correctly. All that to be said, they just need to be in different rows right now. All right, step 1, done. Now we're going to have to get some wires because we're going to do some connecting. Now, I will be using some just plain wires in later tutorials. You will have a whole row of this at your table. Please don't cut any of this until you know exactly what you're using it for because it's all I got. All right, but for right now, this was just what was holding mine together, so I'm going to put it to the side, and we're going to use these. These are connector wires. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move the Arduino out. I want to connect my negative leg to the negative row. Now we are only doing one LED right now, so technically I could take my pin here and connect it straight to the Arduino board, negative to negative. But we are going to be adding to this, and I want to use all of my negatives here later. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our first pin is going to go anywhere in row 2. Because remember, as long as it's in this row, it's connected. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in 2C, I don't know, right next to my negative leg. So if you can see, I have 2 things pinned into row 2. I have the pin the wire is in row 2, and then the negative leg of my LED is in also row 2. They're right next to each other. All right. Now, because this one is negative, and I plan on hooking up all this negative row to the board here in just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make it so you guys can see it. I'm going to pin this in any of the negatives, because remember, once I connect one, this whole thing all the way down is connected. So I'm just going to try to keep it in the same area so I don't get too disorganized or unorganized, and I'm just going to put it in right here. So far, I have the negative column is connected now to the negative leg of my LED. Now, it's not connected to any power source, so right now it's not going to do anything. But let's make it do something, shall we? Let's continue. Now, I'm going to make the entire negative side work by connecting another wire to this negative row. Now, I could connect it here or literally any of these. At this point, this should make a lot of sense. Any of these, because they're all going to be connected. But I like to keep mine organized, and I'm going to be adding a lot of things further down, so I don't want a bunch of wires mixed up. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in that top negative. It's important that I put it in the negative and not positive, because right now we're dealing with the negative. Once it's in, I'm going to connect it to my Arduino board. Now, much like the makey-makeys we learned about in 7th grade, we have to ground our work. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it in the ground pinhole, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So the wire that's loose, I'm going to go put it 1, 2, 3, 4 into ground. So there you have it. All right, I do kind of have it bent right there, hopefully so that you can see it. All right, perfect. Now, if I plug this into the computer right now, it's not going to work. Well, why? It's because I only have negative hooked up. I don't have a full circle. This is actually just one line. It's just power source, negative to negative. So to be able to complete the circuit, I now have to connect my positive. I'm going to go ahead and get another cord, and I want to connect it to my positive. Now, there are going to be some videos that use the resistors here, but we are not going to be using resistors because we are going to be editing in our program later how much voltage comes to this. So we're not going to have any of the resistors out just yet. All right. As you remember, everything that is in the same row as my positive side can connect. So I can plug in right next to the leg here, or I could plug it in here, or I could plug it in here, as long as I'm in row 4. So I'm just going to plug it in whichever one is easiest for me, which happens to be the one right next to it. So now this cord is connected in row 4, meaning that it is connected to the positive leg. Now, once we've done this a few times, you guys are going to be able just to put these on the breadboard so quickly because it's going to make so much more sense as you practice. So, again, we're grounded to negative. So the flow negative and negative, negative. Now we're on the positive side of the LED, so positive, and we're going to connect back to the board to make that full circle. Now, I told you that we're going to be using the numbers with little squiggly lines. This is so we can control the voltage in our programming. So I'm just going to plug into 11 because it's the largest number over here with the little squiggly line, and I'm starting at the top of my breadboard. As we go, we'll add in another LED here, and we'll probably get into 10, another LED, and we'll go to 9, so on and so forth. So I like to keep things organized. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this into 11. Which is right here, so 8, 9, 10, 11. And there you have it. This is a full circle because these do go to the same board, so this is closing my circle. As we go, we will be adding in more LEDs and a switch so that we can turn this on and off. Go ahead and go to the next video to see how we're going to actually program to turn this LED on.